Hi, welcome to Just Out of Curiosity, a podcast that talks about sex and sexuality from the lens of a sex-positive brown woman that has a fascination with alternative or non-conventional lifestyles. My name is Shelly B, and I am that sex-positive brown woman. Over the course of several episodes, I'm excited to dive into topics that titillate my interests and make me ask my guests questions just out of curiosity. And so my curiosity today leads to gender expression and identity part 2. I couldn't make this conversation just one episode. There was just far too much to unpack that I felt it needed a little bit more space to dive. And now, without further ado, the second part to my conversation with Diana Dotto. Was there anything, I'm trying to think of I'm trying really hard not to say masculine energy and feminine energy, but I think I want to say harder and softer, but were there any other types of the energy shift in your body with how you perceived things outside of crying and being maybe more emotional?
I think that in general, I have less anxiety okay, I don't know how to word this. I think I was a very anxious person before, and especially in social settings, because it all felt so false. The way I was interacting with the world, the way the world saw me. Whereas now it's like I have anxiety about if people are going to be mean or awkward to me just because I'm trans. But at least I know that they're seeing me as a more close, authentic version, or close to being authentic. You know, obviously everyone sees things and people through their own lens. But it's just my interactions feel so much more authentic. I can be soft in the way that I want to be, that may have gotten me weird looks, before I transitioned. And again, I don't know where the hormones come into that and where just transitioning and living my truth. But I will say that I had a lot of inner turmoil for my life, basically, until I transitioned. And now a great amount of that inner turmoil is alleviated, but now I have to deal with a lot more BS from the outside world. Right? It's easier to be me on the inside, but it's harder to be me moving in the world in a lot of ways.
Does it involve this notion of passing, like what it means to pass? Does that also play into that, or is that separate?
Yeah, passing is such a complicated thing. If it's a goal of a trans person to pass, that is absolutely acceptable. That is their prerogative. But if you were to kind of examine why they desire that, you'll probably end up with 1,000,001 different reasons. And I'm still exploring that. I'm still exploring just how much do I want to pass. And I think what I would maybe hope for, I think, you never know. Like I said, my hormonal transition started 2019. It was like 4 months before the pandemic. So most of my transition has been under lockdown, and not having to go to all these social settings and be out in the world and be out in the world without a mask on, like things that it was very easy to cocoon. And there's like the butterfly metaphor for trans people that is so fitting. Yeah, so I'm still figuring out just how much I want to pass and what that means to pass, because I also am not a huge fan of having to disclose that I'm trans. Like that is something I have to do a lot on dating sites that are like the predominantly cis dating
Yes.
sites. So like the Bumbles and the Facebook dating and I don't know what other. I pick the apps basically based on which apps have the least scammers on them because it's like just a lot of scammers who ask for your WhatsApp.
Yes.
May I get to know you more, dear? Um, and yeah, so disclosure is like another complicated part of the discussion
Yes.
because once you pass, when do you disclose and do you disclose and how do you do it? So for me, what I think I would love is to look away enough that because I don't want to say pass enough, but I'll use that word to pass enough that I don't constantly get stared at because I have like sensitive eyes to the sun, so I wear a lot of sunglasses. So people can't see my eyes and they can't see that I am looking at them, looking me up and down. And people aren't aware of their facial expressions often because of their own privilege, and it's sometimes just like this confused look, and I know for a lot of them it's not a malicious intent, but it's just like, wow, I don't enjoy the way you're looking at me right now. And I've literally almost said to people, like, take a fucking picture. Like, take a picture and look at it all the time so you never look at another trans person this way again, because it doesn't feel good. It would be nice to not have that, but also I don't think I would mind, and again, it depends on the situation because it might be unsafe if someone automatically knows you're trans. But I kind of want people to know I'm trans as soon as they start talking to me. Because if you get close enough to me to have a conversation, I would much rather you know that way than to have to say I'm trans and then have to deal with like people's reactions to that, which I'm sure would be like, oh, really? I couldn't tell. Men don't read. I don't know why it's an issue for them, but they'll look at my profile and clearly look at my pictures, which I think I look pretty trans. Like I feel like I don't look like a cis woman, or a typical cis woman, whatever that means. But a lot of guys, I have to be like, well, literally every guy at some point in the conversation, I say, and usually early, I say, did you have a chance to read my profile? Yeah. And they often go, no, didn't. Oh, I see you're trans. It's like, yeah. It's literally the first word in my profile because I'm not hiding anything and I want people to know before they engage me. Trans woman, living her truth, looking for a partner, blah, blah, blah. And then you get all the different reactions.
And I can't imagine they're good reactions.
Like some good, some bad. They really range. Like the absolute worst reactions are things like, so you're technically a dude? Ugh. So do you have a dick? It's like, we'll get to that if we're going to get there.
It should never even be the first question.
The best response is, hey, good for you, living your truth. What's it been like for you? Or something like that. Or, you know, for people who don't necessarily, like they've never been with or interacted with a trans person before, they might ask, you know, so what is it like dating as a trans person or dating a trans person? And I totally understand that. And it does get exhausting to have to constantly explain it. And I've gotten to a point where I like have in like my notepads
you've written down
I have like my standard answers for like when someone asks this or that, or why this question was disrespectful and here's a better way to ask it. It's very interesting. But the one like comment that I get sometimes, or I've gotten a couple times, where they say, you wear it well.
What does that mean?
When I say I'm trans. What the fuck does that mean? I think it bothers me most because I just don't get it. It's like, what were you thinking when you said that?
Ah.
And did you think it would be some sort of compliment?
I
Like,
think they do think it's gonna be a
I
compliment.
don't, I think a lot of people
That's
think,
an okay
yeah,
to
like you
say, yeah.
said, it's a compliment because passing must be the goal. And a lot of people say, like, oh, are you doing a full transition? And it's like, what the fuck is a full
Right.
transition? A lot of people think that trans people say, okay, I'm trans, so here is the laundry list of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, what I need to do. I'm going to, in my case, say, oh, so Diana is now changing her name, dressing a certain way, doing the hormones, getting sexual reassignment surgery
Mhm.
or gender affirming surgery, doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it's like, no, every single trans person is different.
Yes.
And our transition is different. And how we express ourselves is different. And so, to me, a full transition is fully realizing your truth, whatever that looks like
That's what
for
it
you.
really should be at the end of
But
the
for
day.
most people, it's a question about genitals. For most cis people posing that
Mhm.
question, to say, is this are you doing a full transition? Are you fully a woman now? It's like, is a vagina all that makes a woman a woman? Is that
I
it? Is that the line you have to cross to finally step into that
and
world?
even then, it's still
The answer is
yeah, the
no,
answer is no. But maybe that to them in their mind,
because that's
yeah,
their
that's how
experience.
they see it, right? Like, I think so many of us have 0 idea and understanding of what transitioning means, and transitioning in their mind is, well, they're
Just
yes,
switching,
exactly,
just
it's
going from
switching.
A to B.
And you it has to be that you pass. It has to be that I don't know, like you want like if I'm a cisgendered woman and if I'm transitioning, the goal for transitioning is to be a fully recognizable man. But it also erases you and erases trans people from the equation, because then there is like, well, where do trans people exist? It's not, it's a journey. It's you guys, you're all people, and maybe this is what you as a trans person is. You don't need to pass, you don't want to pass, you want this. And maybe someone else wants to pass.
Yeah.
Maybe someone just wants to socially
Hmm.
transition, and that's it. And
Yeah, and there's no medical
yeah,
aspect
and
to it.
that should
A
be
lot of people
fine.
don't want to take hormones, don't want to have surgery. They just, change their
Mhm.
name, not necessarily even legally, because that's a whole other thing of BS, the hoops you have to jump
Oh
through for
boy.
that. But yeah, lots of people just, it's a name and the way they dress or the way, you know, they carry themselves.
I also think it's like a way of, if you don't understand the trans world, or if you don't have enough, if you can't see past what that means to transition and why you would want to transition, you're still living in these binaries and these buckets. And then you see trans person who is actually just being themselves, being free of what binaries are. You're still trying to put them in a bucket because you don't
Yeah.
understand that the world is more fluid than that. That's what I see when I
Yeah.
think of all this stuff.
Yes. Yes. And going back to like the very
Mhm.
start of when you were
Yeah.
introing me, it's like the way you introduced me made me realize you were so right in people trying to grasp but not actually trying to
Mm.
grasp like the trans experience or anyone being different,
Yeah.
right? It's like people try to think of people, or people try to define you or understand
Mhm.
you within their own
Yeah.
framework of pre-existing understanding, things they already know they're trying to now apply
Yes.
to you, rather than saying there is probably a shit ton that I don't know, and so I'm going to go into talking to this person with actual curiosity, as opposed to trying to confirm or deny my theories that I've come up with
Yes.
simply from
Mm.
observation and my own experience in life.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I try to approach everyone in my life now. And it's only through exposure. It's truthfully like I've always questioned this about myself. And like that night after we played pool at Pegasus, um,
Yeah.
I went home and I was just like, I should be non-binary. Like that actually is something that I resonates so well with me. I've always thought about it. I have the privilege though that I can be a cisgender woman and have like I can present there's a lot of like masculine traits that I can do and have and no one will question me about
Hmm.
that. I think
Yeah, more
I
socially
think the real
acceptable
biggest
for
issue
sure.
is when it comes to men and how if you ever want to move away from a very specific way of what men look like, then it's just like you're weird, you're different. I don't know if I like you. It's opening up to being threatening, to bullying you. Like gay people too, and even in themselves, like just to be gay sometimes a male gay person has to come out where I hate the fact that everyone has to come out. I wish people could just love who they love and you didn't have to tell anyone.
Yeah, again, that expectation wasn't put on you.
Yeah.
It's like you are assumed to be cis
Yeah.
hetero until you tell the world you're not, and it's up to you to do
And
that.
it's not fair.
Fucking bullshit.
Okay. How has your family been with everything?
Um, it was a process like anything else.
Mm,
My immediate family, like my sister's super accepting, so that was like no issue there.
yeah.
My parents, my mom took a little longer to kind of wrap her head around it. Also, because I think when I said I was non binary, she just took that as like, oh, that's the final decision. Like that's what you are now. And so
Ah,
in her head it was like to now have to wrap her brain about around being a trans woman and all of that. I think it was just a little difficult.
well, it's hard for parents.
Yeah. And they had to get used to it for sure.
Mm,
But also, I was very depressed and very like troubled, and like there was a lot of like self-harm and stuff like that before I transitioned
oh,
that they were aware of, and they knew that like if this is what it takes for me to be happy and for me to be healthy and to love myself, then they were going to get on board with it. And they did.
yeah.
And so I'm very lucky in that way. Very, very lucky, because so many trans people do not have that level of acceptance from their family, and support and genuinely wanting to understand my experience better and that kind of thing. Cousins are super supportive, and my grandparents who I have seen, they're great. I don't know what to say other than that I'm very lucky to have accepting family. Maybe they also know, because they do know my personality pretty well, that if they didn't accept me, I'd just be like, well, fuck you then, and walk away.
Yeah.
Like I am not going to be told that I need to act a certain way at a family gathering, or that I need to, present and like ever. They would never expect me to like go back in the closet for some reason, like they
Yeah.
would never ask that of me. Whereas I know people who have had that asked of them. Like, if you're coming back to our small town for a holiday, you need to present this way. You need to go by this name.
I feel like that's a strength that you have that most people don't have, the ability to say, well, if you don't like me for who I am, you can fuck right off and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Most people can't do that, or they don't feel supported, or don't feel like they can actually say that without feeling harm or without feeling unsafe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that that's something to be said about you and your character though. The fact that
Thank
you
you.
have the ability to do that. Yeah, no, because like listen, I have a lot like I have a lot of privilege, but like the fact that I'm doing a podcast about sex and I come from an Indian background and they're pretty traditional of their own rights. It's weird for me to be single in my late 30s I'm fearful sometimes of what my aunts and uncles might say about the topics that I'm talking about, what I'm saying and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. Like, and it's weird because it's like family is something that you're born into. I mean, I know you're born into, you don't have a choice to have them there, and you come from all walks of life and you kind of just have to accept each other. But for some reason, we always feel like we need their acceptance.
Yeah.
And so it's a very fine line you tread to, like, you want to make them happy, you want to feel seen by them for some reason because they're just people. Like, I don't know, I love my chosen family so much. I have so much more
Yeah.
respect for that.
Yeah. Found family is definitely a very important part of it. And finding that chosen family gives you often, or gave me that strength within to be just like, well, those who don't accept me and love me the way I am, they can literally go fuck themselves. Like, contort yourself into whatever position you need to do that in the privacy of your own home. Just don't come near me, like, just go fuck yourself and have a nice life.
So there's something to be said about community, right? Like, we definitely need that more. If, like, so you had, what was the name of that? Sherburne Health.
Oh, the gender journeys.
Mm-hmm. Gender journeys. Yeah. Was there, have there been other, like, have you found community in other areas as well that have helped?
Yeah, I mean, the internet is awesome for a lot of reasons in that it's allowed minority groups to find each other. There are, YouTubers that I love that I will listen to when I need to feel connected to the community or feel connected to a greater trans experience. There are Facebook groups as well, where you can go and ask questions. And like, I'm like looking to start electrolysis. And so I'm asking, like, in that group, like, instead of just asking Yelp, where do I get electrolysis? You ask that group. So then, oh, this one's in a certain neighborhood. And, there are people who have had good experiences and, their clientele is like 50% trans women kind of thing. So that kind of community has been great. I definitely think I would like to have more trans friends, and I would like to have more trans friends here in Vancouver, to, be able to connect in that in-person level. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about community. I'm definitely still exploring that. Like, that's an ongoing exploration of just like everything. Yeah. How much do I want that? How much do I need it? Where can I find it? How easy or difficult is that going to be?
Is it hard to, like, the fact that you say you want to have more trans people in your life, is it hard to find, like, I don't know if it's segregated, because sometimes I feel like sometimes it can be a little bit segregated with people, like they like to stick together in their cliques. I mean, I know, like, we're all people, but like even I struggle to find friends in general. But like,
totally, it's totally that. Like, it's still just being an adult and making friends is not an easy thing.
Yeah, everyone's on different mental health journeys as well, too, right? Like, I have learned, so like, it's so interesting going to therapy and having and talking through my shit with someone else, and I realize that we're all living in our own heads. And when someone says something to you, actually, this is like a good segue to maybe something else to talk about. But when people are talking to you, they don't realize that their limit, like their worldview of what they're saying, is different to your worldview. It was, misgendering or saying to you, like, I don't necessarily understand why you're trans. I'm gonna reference your cat sitter because that's something that I have said to myself too. Like, I don't necessarily understand, or
That's
I can never understand.
People have this expectation that they need to completely comprehend what makes a person trans in order to accept it and embrace it. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's not actually how acceptance and embracing diversity and different ways of life, that's not how it works, because it's just almost like egotistical to think like I must fully grasp this, otherwise it's not valid. And you just never will. You never will fully grasp a trans experience unless you are trans. And even then, you are only fully grasping your own trans experience. I have no clue what it's like to be a trans masculine person. Yes, I have things in common with those individuals that allows me to, have a certain level of empathy or sympathy or compassion for understanding aspects of their experience, but I will never fully understand it. And just like how I can't understand what it's like to be anything other than white, like that. And like, I don't need to like completely understand the Black experience in order to be able to say Black Lives Matter, and like, I obviously want to do my part to better understand how I can help make the world better for people who don't look like me or live like me, but I can never fully understand it. You just can't. And it doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to happen to be an ally. Like, you don't need to fully grasp and comprehend. You just don't, because you can't.
Right. Yeah, I have to check myself too sometimes because I know that I think we're always trying to make sense of everything. We're trying to understand things on like all the time, and we don't realize that like you said, you don't need to understand everything. That's part of the journey that we're on. It's trying to make sense of everything.
Yeah.
And so to stop approaching things from the lens of, this has to make sense to me, otherwise it doesn't, I don't get it, or I can't have this in my life.
Totally.
And just be like, yeah, it's just changing the way you look at things. I think it's hard for me to understand, but I think that's equally hard for you to always get from people.
Yes, totally. And it's a thing these days, right? Everyone has to feels they have to have an opinion on everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to have an opinion on Ukraine. You have to have an opinion on COVID vaccines. You have to have an opinion on like Canadian politics. Like, you actually don't. I mean, like, you really don't. You're allowed to say, I actually don't understand enough about this to form an opinion.
Well, also, Lynn, you're also picking and choosing.
Maybe you want to cut that part.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. I see what you're passionate about.
You don't have to have an opinion.
Yeah,
you don't have to have an opinion on the trans lifestyle, because you can never understand it enough to have an opinion.
Yeah.
It's not, like, as a cis person, you just understand it enough, if you want, in order to make space for trans individuals. Understand it enough to know the things that you're doing potentially that are making life harder for trans people or more uncomfortable.
Can you speak more to that? Like, what does make things more uncomfortable and harder for trans people? Are there like things that stick out in your mind?
Shit.
It's a lot. I feel like there's
because there's so many directions to go.
I think it's
right?
also debunking the gender binary is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Gender binary and just the expectations and roles and stipulations that come with that binary. Like, freeing your mind of that, and like generally not going into things with expectations.
Which is hard because I think we live our whole lives with expectations, or we've been taught to have expectations, and then we want them met. And then when they're not met, we get upset.
Yeah. It's like a threat to our survival, Maybe it is an instinctual survival thing. I don't fucking
Truthfully though,
know.
I think before colonization came into play, and there's some books that say that gender division came with the agricultural revolution and how like how the family looked after everyone. I'm still trying to figure all that out. But
Interesting.
I generally
Okay.
think that there was a time humans were just humans. They lived void of gender roles and they lived free of sexual preference. I think everyone was fucking everyone and they didn't care what they wore, they didn't care what they looked like, because there has to be something. I feel like it's so innate, people that are non-binary or are non-conforming. There's something so innate about that. There's something so innate about gay people as well that it makes me think that we were free beings at one point and we didn't really care and no one really governed us and told us that what we were doing were wrong. And then religion came in and then government came in and colonists were like, no, I don't like the way the indigenous people are acting and I want to show that we're different. And that level of control is what really changed everything.
Yeah.
And now like you see and now we're coming out of that woodwork a little bit. That's
Yeah.
my
It's a social construct.
yeah.
So before humans had social constructs such as gender and, rank and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
what was it like? I don't know.
Yeah, because there's also
I
matriarchal
don't know.
societies, and I'm curious to know how those are different than patriarchal societies.
Yeah, and what was the genesis of that?
Mm.
Like how did those come to be? Like why? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
don't
I
know.
think there's so much more
It's
strength in
so
women. Yeah,
fascinating.
I think women have way more resilience
Oh
than men
hell
do,
yeah.
and they don't want to give us credit for that, or they just can't see past it.
Yeah. I mean, but then that gets into the question of where does that strength of women come from? Is
Mm.
that an inborn strength or is it something that is grown and fostered because of a world that treats women so poorly?
Mm.
Having to be strong to rise to the occasion. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't
It could
know.
be a
I'm just
combination of the
posing
two.
that question. Like what is it really? Just like how you were saying men don't necessarily have that strength.
Mhm.
Is men lacking strength inherent or is it because the world has been handed down to them?
Yeah.
And therefore things were easy and therefore they didn't have to have things like emotional strength and whatnot.
All these questions. This has turned
It's
into a
so
bit philosophical. I
fascinating.
know.
Yeah.
I love this
And
stuff.
just like saying like how women have this uh what's the word, like reputation or like this thought in society that women are like emotionally manipulative and so emotional and that kind of
Mm.
stuff, and it's like men are some of the most manipulative people I
Yes.
have ever dealt with, and like no longer dating gay men,
Uh-huh.
right? Because I used to date gay men and that was so lovely, but now I date people who, men who typically identify as straight or bi or pan or they don't identify or whatever.
Mm.
Yeah, there's some real like emotionally manipulative assholes out there.
I mean, I think we're all fucked up individuals that have been fucked up by traumas. And then
Yes.
instead of working through our issues, we project that trauma onto other people, which
Mm-hmm.
then only messes them up even more.
Yeah.
And so you're just living in this, like, I guess, hurt people.
Yep.
And instead of trying to work through that stuff, we're living in our own heads and then we're living through other people's insecurities. And that's really what's causing all the issues to begin with, because we're too scared of having actual conversations about things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna start. I would like to wrap things up slightly, but before I do, one of my friends told me that the name of my podcast, just out of curiosity, kind of lends itself to asking the most random questions, but it's okay because I'm like, just out of curiosity, as if it's really cute and like whatever. So I had a couple questions that I wanted to ask you. Um,
Is
Nothing
this
really
like a
too deep,
rapid fire?
hopefully.
Like, am I answering
A
like
little bit,
one word
yeah.
answer? Okay.
Well, yeah, just think about it briefly, okay? So, just out of curiosity, Who are you crushing on currently? Or who is like a crush that you
Whoa.
have?
Whoa. You know who I'm crushing on right now is there's like a
Yeah.
video that's gone kind of viral, and it's like this guy, I guess, doing streeters, like asking random questions of people on the
Yeah.
street, and he's like asking this one guy, like, how much would you have to get paid to suck a dick?
Mm.
And the guy is like, well, is she trans? Is she hot? Because I'll do that for free. You couldn't pay me to suck a guy's dick. And the guy was like, you'd suck a trans woman for free? And he's like, already have. And like, this guy is
Yes.
getting so much love online. And it's just like
I can
that
see
energy.
that.
Like the trans community is like, woo! But it's just like that's who I'm crushing on. Like men who are just so confident in themselves that it's just like, I'm
Yes.
not going to hide anything about who I am. You know, I like,
Mhm. Okay. I'm going to ask you another
your
question while you're looking that up, okay?
listeners. Yeah.
Um, so just out of curiosity, is there something you're curious about trying in the bedroom, but either too nervous or just haven't had the chance to explore that? Especially now, as like as you experience orgasms in different ways.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have done most things. Most of the
Mm.
things you can think of, I've done.
Yes.
I would like to have the experience of dating a trans man or trans masculine individual,
Hmm.
um, just to, be able to connect with someone on that level,
Yeah.
to have a partner who is trans.
Right. Because I get it.
Um, yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah.
makes it sound like I want to, because I get fetishized a lot by guys who are just like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a fetish for me, and it's just like, no, I'm a fucking person. Like, say
Exactly.
that it's like an interest or something like that. Don't say that it's a fetish for you.
Yeah.
um
Oof.
like, it's just so dehumanizing. Like, you can have a foot fetish or a shoe fetish, because those are not people. A
Yeah.
foot is attached to people,
Yeah.
but trans people are people. You should not be having a fetish for us. You are just trans attracted if you are attracted to trans people.
I feel like that makes it easier for them to it's an easier way of saying it. I'm not trying to make excuses for them. But
Yeah,
also I don't think
totally.
they recognize the impact of
Hmm.
their words as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to change gears a little bit. So just out of curiosity, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, good question. Okay, I'm a comic
Yeah, that's
nerd.
why I
Like,
asked
I'm
the
wearing this
question.
X-Men shirt. So I've thought about this so many times, and
Mhm.
like the debate in my head is always this: would I just want to be like Mystique from the X-Men? Because
Mhm.
then I can change my shape and feel and present however I want to, when I want to. Because that would make transitioning so easy.
Yes. Oh
It
my
would make it a
gosh.
hell of a lot cheaper money-wise. Gets rid of, like, painful surgeries and, like, just so much.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's like, well, that's literally all Mystique can do, is turn into other people. And I wanna look like myself.
Mm.
And since I
Mm.
can transition
Yeah,
without the
what's
help of a
uh-huh.
mutant X gene, I think I would want to have some sort of like water aquatic power,
It's your
being
favorite
able to
element,
like,
isn't it?
yeah, it's my
Yeah.
favorite element.
Yeah.
So to be able to control it and to be able to like swim without coming up for air, like
Mm.
that would be dope.
Yeah.
Basically, if mermaid was was a power, I would be a mermaid.
I love that. I feel like I can continue talking to you for so much more because there's so many more things I
Yay.
want to ask. However, we will have to pause that for another time, but I wanted
Okay.
to I wanted to thank you so much. It's been a blast.
This
Like,
was so fun.
I'm so
I thought I would
happy.
be more like nervous. I'm sure I said stupid stuff.
Not at
So
all.
disclaimer, we're all just stumbling
Listen,
through
I
this together, understanding
exactly.
each other's and our own experiences. But this was such an awesome way to do it.
I'm so happy. I'm like, this is really what I want to put out there into the world. So I'm happy that you're
Yay.
on my
You're
side for
doing it,
this.
Shell.
Yay, thank you.
Kabad, Shelly.
Yeah. Bad TV. I missed you saying that to me,
I had
actually.
to. Had to.
Okay, so can I plug you on anything? Where can we find you on social media? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'll give you my Weapon Hex Customs. That's my Facebook and Instagram. That's my like little action figures that I paint and customize, and it's a little bit of a side hustle.
You do commissions?
Yeah, I
Okay.
totally do.
All right.
I love to do commissions. That's the best place to find me in like a public facing way.
Yeah. All right. Weapon Hex Customs.
Yeah.
Perfect. I really wanted to thank you for taking time out of your day to come talk to me. I feel like
Love to do it.
I'm on this journey of learning and growing, and you're only helping me do that more. And I'm hoping
Thanks,
that
doll.
helps the listeners
Likewise.
too. Yay.
Yes.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, doll.
Now that I've had some time to digest this conversation a bit, I had some thoughts, as if you thought I'd be done talking. I had a couple of preconceived notions before having this conversation with Diana. I feel the need to talk about them because I mostly want to show that we're not static in our thinking. We choose to be that way. We do learn and grow constantly, and I thrive and live for that. And I would like to highlight that I've also come a long way to be that person who sees the world as they do now. The first preconceived notion I had was that of passing. Passing describes the experience of a transgender person being seen by others as the gender they want to be seen as. I assumed that passing was the end goal for trans people, and while that may be for some, my biggest takeaway was transforming the idea of trans people that want to just pass to that more of them finding community. What we're searching for constantly is community, and it takes some serious moxie to live your authentic self in a world that's not ready or knows what to do with that. In my opinion, society isn't really kind to those that look different, and this is also the issue. The more we laugh and joke about how we'd like to identify, it then creates a threatening space for those in that marginalized group. As a result, it allows those in the majority, cisgendered people in this case, to make fun of anyone non-conforming, and for it equally to be okay to make fun of those people. I can totally understand what it's like to use humor as a source of deflection, but not when it starts allowing for bullying and harassment to increase. It kind of feels like that Black Lives Matter resistance by saying all lives matter. Just because a minority group is asking to be seen and recognized and not have to worry about losing lives doesn't take away from everyone else. There is enough space for all of us to exist without resistance. And I'll reiterate something Diana discussed. I've never had a negative experience with a police officer. Just because I've never had a negative experience with the police doesn't take away from those that have. I don't turn around and make fun of those that have. I choose to listen to their stories because there's always something I don't know. But I can't act like my reality is the only one that exists. I can't deny other stories and perspectives. It just tells me what's missing from mine. And I'm not about living that delusional life. The other thing that blows my mind is the bodily perspective Diana went through while doing hormone replacement therapy. Having it be harder to cry and feel emotions with testosterone to being able to have a good cry with little to no testosterone in your body. I didn't realize the impact hormones have on gendered characteristics. And then having that perspective of experiencing your body and the world from different hormonal changes. Personally, I think it's fascinating. I'm always curious about what I don't know. And someone who is trans that sees the world from different lenses, it can provide so much insight into how and why we treat each other now, and also how we can do better for ourselves. Sometimes I wonder what this world could look like if we were all given the space to live our most authentic selves, void of criticism, harassment, and shame, and to be able to hold that same space for others, regardless of if we understand them or not. It's my ideal world, especially when it comes down to who we love and how we choose to express ourselves. Could it actually happen? Doubt it. But I really would like to believe that it could. would like to thank you for tuning in today. Download, leave a review, follow, and share this episode and the podcast with your friends, family, really whomever you like. You can find me on Just Curiosity Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and you can email me at justcuriositypod@gmail.com, as I would absolutely love to know your thoughts, insights, comments, and all those juicy stories. But most of all, stay curious, friends. I'm Shelly D, and this has been Just Out of Curiosity.